Book 2, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and today I'm not going with a literary thing. I'm actually going to talk about a movie, or particularly my favorite miniseries. But this is by someone who is an author. It is a Stephen King screenplay that came out in the early 2000s. I thought it came out towards the end of the 90s, but actually no, it came out, the miniseries I think came out in 2002. I guess because I saw the 90s date on the screen when we have the prologue. But this was something he did for ABC. Now, this is obviously not the first time. He also did his own version of his book, The Shining, because he did not like Stanley Kubrick's film because it didn't stay true to the original source material. So he tried to stay true to his own book because he is the author, so it makes sense. And I've heard that, it was made in the 80s, I think. And, people, it's always one versus the other. A lot of people prefer the Stanley Kubrick film. I've never seen the miniseries. I can't really judge it. But, this review I watched comparing the two, he said it was good and he actually liked it. He really loves watching it. And it's one of the... Now, there are flaws because it was made in the 80s. The special effects look like they weren't as good. But I would like to see that version at some point. But the one I'm going to talk about is Rose Red by Stephen King. And this was made into this was a mini-series starring Nancy Travis, David Dukes, who sadly passed away after the movie was made. Actually, it might have been during filming he passed away. You have Kimberly J. Brown, Melanie Zelinsky, Julian Sands, who also is another actor who sadly passed away. Kevin Teige, I think he's a more veteran actor. I don't know everyone's names. Let's see who else. I cannot remember who the other names, the other actors. But anyway, so this is his take on a haunted house story. This was very much inspired by The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson and The Winchester Mystery House. Now, neither one of those sources I was as familiar with when I first saw this movie, so I didn't really notice that kind of stuff. But now, of course, watching it, yeah, I can see the references and everything and the homages that this movie pays to it. So this like I said, this came out in the early 2000s. And what was really cool is that ABC also had them, like, a few weeks before before the first episode hit the air, they actually did a documentary, like, as if this was based on a real haunted house. And the history of the house and everything, and talking about our main protagonist, the professor in the story. And there's also they had another author. It was not Stephen King, although people believed it was when it first came out. And there was even rumors that his wife, when they realized he didn't write it, that maybe his wife Tabitha wrote it, because she's also a writer. But this was actually the book was actually written by I think one of the reviews I watched said he was a thriller author, Ridley Pearson. And it's a diary of one of the main ghosts that haunts the house. It's her diary on her life in this house, her experiences. It's called The Diary of Ellen Rimbauer, My Life at Rose Red. Which I read it a long time ago. I liked it at the time. It's been years and I would love to reread it at some point. But, so we have our main protagonist, played by Nancy Travis, Joyce Reardon, Professor Reardon. She is a paranormal psychologist at a local Seattle. It does not take place in Maine. It actually takes place in Seattle, Washington. A university in Seattle. and she is obsessed with this house that's in downtown Seattle, this rose red. She is very, like, she has a picture of Ellen Rimbauer. She has a picture of the house. She is determined to, explore the house at some point, and she gets into a relationship with the last remaining heir of the house, Stephen Rimbauer, and is able to convince him to let her go there for Memorial Day weekend with a team of psychics before he has it torn down, because of course this house has ruined his family's life, and and but her boss, the head of her department, he does not like her. He can't stand her. He's a very rational person, very doesn't believe in her psychic belief system, and he wants to get rid of her, wants her fired. He wants to revoke her tenure, and he just can't stand her. And he ends up hiring, and that's Carl Miller is his name. Carl Miller ends up hiring a reporter, to a college student reporter, to kind of expose her. And it, but she's on to him. She's well aware of what he's doing, of what Carl Miller is doing. And there's a lot of tension there between the two of them. So meanwhile, the first episode has her contacting all the people that she wants on her team to investigate this house. So first we have Emery Waterman, and I'm gonna put this down, by the way. My arm is... Emery Waterman, he lives with his mom. He's kind of like not a very likable person. He's very bitter and angry. He has an overbearing mother that constantly overshadows him. He has to take care of her. She's very reckless with her spending, so he has to deal with the bills. That's why he wants to go on this expedition, so that he can get paid. He is post-cognitive, so he sees the past, the long ago past. He sees visions of what happened centuries ago or years ago. And he's just not, he's got a lot of issues. And the actor says in the making of the movie that he refers to the character as the squeaky wheel. And he goes through a lot in the story that, and he was bullied back in the, when he was a kid. He doesn't have the best relationship with his mom, and there's actually one character that kind of, messes with him a lot when they're in the house, one of the other members. And he's a mouth breather, basically. He's like, he's got a lot of issues. And so then let's talk about the character that kind of gives him the most hard time, and that is Nick Carraway, I think, or no, wait, not Nick Carraway. I'm thinking of the Great Gatsby. Nick, this character of Nick, who's charming, who's charismatic. He's very opposite of Emery. He's a very likable character. His main psychic gift is telepathy. But he's also just a nice guy, I mean, he gives Emery a hard time, teases him, because he kind of, like, probably is that person who rolls their eyes at characters at people like Emery and just mocks them. And he's a little bit more very insightful character, and he's one of my favorite characters. He's just such a likable, charming guy, and it kind of makes me think, gives me Professor vibes. And then you have Kathy, who is this very good Christian woman. She believes in God. She's a kind, loving person, just tries to see the best in people and tries to be very open to them, very, just very kind to them. And you don't learn a lot about her except for her Christian beliefs, and that she is an automatic writer, which I think that's basically someone, she can form a psychic connection with them, and then through her hand she can write down whatever they're thinking, I'm guessing. And like Nick kind of compares it to Ouija board, but she doesn't like the Ouija board. She feels it has too wide of a connection and nasty things could potentially come out if you're not careful. And of course, she's also a Christian woman, so it makes sense that she does not want to mess with the Ouija board. And she's very sweet, and she doesn't lose her temper that often. Like, it's not until like they've been in the house for a long time and they're afraid, they're terrified and being terrorized by these ghosts, that she at one point snaps. And you know, not crazy snaps, but just gets angry, loses her temper a little bit. I mean, not even like violently, just kind of snaps at people a little bit. And like she tries so hard to be, you know, accepting of Emery and not, you know, give him our time like Nick does. But there's at one point where she, like when they're in the house, it's suggested they use the buddy system and not to go wandering up, because you can easily get lost in the house and the house will eat you if you're not careful. And she finally gets so fed up with Emery's attitude and his cynicism, and goes into the kitchen. Nick follows her, and she admits that she just could not stand Emery and that he was rubbing her the wrong way, and she just had to get out of the room. And so then we have Pam. Pam is very sweet, also a very kind person, very just like very wholesome, very quiet and reserved. Her and Kathy have a similar look to them, where they're very homely and just and you don't know a lot about her. In fact, she's one of the first people to go. She is what, I don't know if I have trouble saying this, but psychosometry, which basically she says the slang term for it is touch-know, where you can touch objects and you can see memories of the last person who touched that object, what happened what was happened around that object, and that object's history. And this gift reminds me of I think it's the same gift that Johnny Smith has in The Dead Zone. Is that, I think, you know, it's the exact same gift. And like she gets these vibes and feelings from you know, these objects that she touches. And so like I said, there's not a lot known about her. But although apparently Emery's mom, overbearing mother, is convinced that she's a tramp. And at one point when she, you know, as a ghost, she kind of does hit on Emery. The ghost of her ghost hits on, you know, becomes a bit more flirtatious and hits on Emery at one point. And then you have Vic. He's this older man. He's been around. He's experienced a lot of life. He's also, like Nick, he's very charming and charismatic. He has a heart condition, so he takes medication for that. But then once he takes his medication, he's like, let's party, let's have some fun. And he actually is precognitive, as in he can see things right before they happen. So I think, like with Emery, he sees things that happened a long time ago, while Vic sees things that are going to happen in the next few moments. But yeah, he's like, I like his character too, and just as I like Nick's character. And then so the most important psychic that Joyce wants to get is this 15-year-old girl, Annie Whedon, who is autistic, she's telekinetic, and she's a very powerful psychic. And so Joyce sees this as, if I can get this girl, I can truly wake up Rose Red, because Rose Red has been what is known as a dead cell. It hasn't had any activity, like it hasn't had people living in the house for a long time. So the house is not very active right now. It's kind of dormant, like a dormant volcano. And she wants to, basically Joyce's goal is to kind of wake up the house a little bit to prove that psychic things like the supernatural is real. She's determined to prove it to people like Carl Miller that there is such thing as the supernatural, and get her evidence before, and like he's obviously gonna get her fired. He's trying to get her fired and make her look ridiculous. So she is determined to get her proof, because she's had to deal with a lot of people like Carl Miller constantly being telling her that she's crazy, and that there's no scientific evidence that supernatural stuff happens, and she wants to use Annie because Annie is super powerful. And now of course Steven, the last remaining heir, is like, no, you don't want to wake up this house. And Annie is she mostly keeps to herself. But I feel like she's a lot smarter than people give her credit for, and she's also very insightful. But she's an autistic child that doesn't communicate that often. Like, she only says a few words. Like, I'm convinced, I think the reason why, like, she has her older sister who kind of takes care of her, Rachel, but they call her sister, and I'm thinking that's because Annie probably could not say Rachel. So it was just easier for everyone to call her sister. And her sister is very much like a very sweet, caring person, very loving, wants to protect her sister. And one of the main plot points in episode 1 is that the dad does not want Annie to go to this house because he knows it's dangerous, and he's worried, and even if she survives this house, he doesn't know what's going to happen for her when she gets out, and how it's going to be for her with her, talking about if she talks about this house and stuff, and how people are going to exploit her and mess with her and stuff. So the dad has some valid points about the house and Annie going there. But Rachel is thinking, Rachel wants to send her sister to this special school for kids autistic kids like her, autistic teenagers. But of course, it costs money to go to this school. And, Joyce doesn't even promise her more money. She's going to pay all these people. And she promises her even more money. Because she's so desperate for Annie to come with her. And Rachel, of course, because she's her sister's caretaker, she's going to go too. And the house seems to I feel like the house, gets inside the head of Joyce, uses her, and I think it tries to do the same thing to Annie, because Annie, the house, I feel like it calls to her because she wants to go to this house so bad, and that's the only reason and I think that's part of the reason why the dad is changing his mind, because he knows his daughter really wants to go, and will form a temper tantrum if she doesn't go, and if she doesn't get to go, and you see the house, you can see the house calling to Annie through different manifestations. In fact, it even warns Emery not to go, which I'm convinced that it didn't want Emery to go because it knew that Emery could potentially be a threat to it. It sends him messages to scare him off, visions to scare him off. But of course, Emery is like, I'm broke, I need the money to pay our bills and stuff like that. And I think he also wants to get away from his mother. So so she doesn't going with her sister. Now the last important character is Steven Rimbauer. He's like I said, he's the heir of the estate and wants to get rid of this, cut down this house. And at first, the others but people like Kathy are like, but it's a piece of history, you shouldn't cut it down and knock this house down. And he's, but for him, it's he needs the money, and he hates the house because, like I said, it eats his relatives, and he enjoys her dating, so and they end up getting in the house, and a lot of weird, creepy stuff happens, and the house basically takes people one by one. It has a habit of eating, holding the women hostage, and killing the men, essentially. There's also, we do through flashbacks, we learn the history of the house and the Rimbauer family. We learn that Ellen was this 20-year-old woman who married John Rimbauer, this 40-year-old oil tycoon, and he decides to build this house for his wife as a gift. And while the house is still being built, they go on this leisurely honeymoon around the world, and they get to Africa, and Ellen contracts malaria. I think it's malaria. Malaria or scarlet fever or something. And she ends up, while he's off having fun and exploring, she's taken care of by this woman, Sukina, who she ends up taking back with her. And because they become good friends, and she becomes kind of a companion and a maid to Ellen, and her ally in this war against John Rimbauer. She ends up when you do learn also that while this house is being built, some of the people on the crew got killed at one point. So even the ground where this house is, bad things happened to people. And she ends up giving birth to a boy, which is all John cares about. He just wants his son to continue his legacy and heir to his family. And so she gives him an heir, but then she also gives him a daughter who is born with a withered arm, and she blames her disease that she got in Africa and her husband on what happened to her daughter. So she slowly over time just gets resentful and hateful towards her husband. She just can't stand him. And it's justifiable because he wasn't there for her when she got sick, when they were in Africa, and you get the impression that he is a bit of a flirt, and that's playing it nicely. He gets around with women. And at one point, she hires a psychic, Madame Stravinsky, aka Cora Fry, because Ellen fears her getting sick again. And this woman ends up telling her that you have to keep this house will not be finished until you say it's finished. Tells her she's got to add on to this house. So she just starts building and building. And, John is okay with it because, you gave me a boy anyway, so I don't care what you do. And he does get his son out of the house because once he starts to realize a lot of weird things are happening in this house, people tend to just appear in this house, he gets his son out of there. In fact, at one point, his former partner, kills himself in the house. So we get that whole backstory while through flashbacks. But so let's talk about my thoughts on this miniseries. First of all, it's one of my favorite all time, and I'm just gonna gush about. I absolutely love this miniseries. It's so good. It's such a fun, creepy, atmospheric series. It's probably more scary if you watch it at night. And, of course, if you don't know what's going to happen, then it's probably more scary if you're watching it for the first time. The special effects, you could argue, are probably dated. I'm not a good judge of that, so if you probably want to watch other people's reviews of this miniseries to determine. But I think it's pretty good. I mean, it's early to, I think it's pretty decent special effects. I love the makeup. The makeup is amazing. The makeup on, and also I just love a good ghost story, like with it, where you learn the background. I mean, some of my favorite Supernatural episodes are based on the ghost story episodes. But I also I love the backstory of this house and how we see that play out. And just the concept of this house is so cool, especially, being based in the Winchester Mystery House, where there are so many intriguing spaces throughout the house. Like, there's an upside down room in the house where the chandeliers are on the ground and, are on the floor instead of on the ceiling. His furniture is, his desk and chairs and stuff are on the ceiling. And it's just such a cool room. And then there's the mirror library where there's a, the floor is basically a whole mirror. Um, and there's like this forced perspective hallway that Tsukina designs for her. It's just so many cool spaces. And of course, the house just keeps building. Like, you find, the house just keeps adding on. It gets to the point where it adds on to itself. It keeps just building, and it's really like it's a maze in this house. You can get lost easily, and you learn that you can count the rooms, and you can count this has this many rooms, but then you can count again and it will be you get this number of rooms instead, which I don't know how you do that, because you will be doing that for a long time, and you would be counting, if you're trying to count all the rooms in that house, you'd be counting it for days. But just the idea of this house is such a cool concept, and so creepy. Like, I love the like haunted houses that just are like mazes. They just keep building onto themselves. The mystery, the intrigue of those houses. And I do appreciate that, ABC and Stephen King sold this story by, like, they did the documentary as if it's a real house, and it is based on a real house. The Winchester Mistress, which I would love to go. Also, I'd be very apprehensive to go there, but I would also kind of love to go and explore it a little bit. But it's in California. And, we also, but, as far as they were such great. Stephen King is so good at characters. Like, if it had been longer, they probably could have, as one reviewer pointed out, they could have explored more with the characters, and we really could have got to know them a lot more. Like, some of these characters we don't know as well as I would like to know them. Like, we get to know Annie a lot, and we get to know Emery a lot, and of course Joyce. But, like, there's characters like, we know very little about Kathy and Nick and Vic and, and the rest of the psychics. We don't know a lot about them and their backstory. We do know, like, Kathy goes to therapy, and she has trouble finishing things, and that's what inspired her to do this, because she wanted to prove to her former therapist, I can get stuff done. I can do this. And it's, so I would have loved to get to know some of these characters a little bit more. So I wish that this had been more than just a mini series. Just as, like, I think The Count of Monte Cristo would be great as a TV series, which would last a long time. I think would last, like, years, potentially. Like, a couple years. And I think they could do that with this one, like, make it into a series that would last years. Or at least, like, just make it, like, a couple years if you want. Like, Arcane did, a 2-season arc, so it was only 2 years. And then they're gonna do a whole new story in that kind of world, in the League of Legends world. But yeah, this was just so cool and so creepy. And it is really cool that this house is actually, it's not isolated. Like, most haunted house stories have a house that's kind of isolated by itself, but this one is in downtown Seattle. Like, you can see it, and across the way there's the whole city, the rest of the city. Like, if you look out the window of the house, you get a view of the city, of downtown. And like, the only other time I've seen a haunted house story like that was actually more the kid haunted house stories, like the Goosebumps episode with Dead House. I think that was in a regular neighborhood, so it wasn't isolated. Monster House, the movie Monster House, I think that was in a neighborhood. But adult haunted house stories, they always the house is always isolated, which I know why. I mean, it makes sense that they're trying to you're isolated, you're in danger, it's miles and miles to the next neighbor that could maybe save you from the house. It would take forever for someone to come and show up and in Casper, Whipstaff I think is off somewhere. I mean, it's not far. It's a bike ride or a drive. Downtown is a bike ride or a drive, but it's still kind of isolated. It's still off by itself. So it was kind of cool because then it makes it even more ominous. I can't say that word. That it's close. You can see the city. So it's in a way it's I can't really explain it. It's just that it's not so isolated, but in a way it still is kind of isolated. These people are totally unaware that this house is and people will be probably too afraid to approach this house, but there are people close by that if you need someone, then you can you can call someone and they're close by enough that they could potentially get to you on time. But yeah, this is one of my favorite miniseries. It's so creepy and it's so so much fun. It is older, so some things are dated. And also the music in this is really beautiful. They use big band music. I can't remember what the artist and the band is called, but it's a known, very famous band. That they always play, that Annie is a big fan of, that they use throughout the movie. Also the music when they're going through the house, the greenhouse, when they're in the greenhouse, that is really beautiful music. And the house is so it's beautiful. It has a beauty to it, even though it's really creepy. It does have its own morbid beauty to it, this house, with these these statues and everything, these demonic looking statues. And I don't know what else to say. I just love this movie. I just love this miniseries. It's really great. And it hasn't, it's a little different from some other Stephen King works, but it could really, I guess, it also has a lot of the staples of Stephen King, there, the two most significant things that, it's not in Maine and there isn't a writer in the story, but there is there is an overbearing mother. There's characters that I don't know. The one I can think of the most is the overbearing mother. That's a common trope in Stephen King's works. But there are professors, so even if they're not writers, there are a professor. But yeah, this is really good. I mean, if you haven't checked this out by Stephen King, if you're a Stephen King fan, check this out. But so those are my thoughts on Stephen King. Stephen King's Rose Red. Also, there is like I said, there's the Diary of Ellen Rimbauer if you're looking for extra stuff to go with the movie. That, I remember that being pretty good. I haven't read it in a long time, but I mean, I have thought about getting it again. If I can get I think it'd be really cool if they published an edition of that book like a diary. To make it actually look like a diary. I think that'd be really cool. I mean, they already have a lot of special editions. I think publishing it, setting up a diary, maybe, and having a ribbon bookmark, having it in leather bound format, making it black or red would be great. Having gold foiling on it, that, red color pages would be really pretty. Just like I said, make it look like a diary, an actual physical diary. That would be really cool if they could do that. Like have a special edition for it. But I would love to reread it again just to see how I feel about it. If I still think, because I know it does get some criticism too, you know. But if you want a companion piece to this, check that out too. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on Rose Red. Yeah, so I hope you liked this. I know it wasn't book related, but I hope you enjoyed it. And, you know, maybe you'll want to watch this around October instead. I mean, I probably could wait until then to film this, but it was on my mind already, so I wanted to just film it now, get it, before I change my mind or forget about it, and then by this, and I never do it. But maybe watch us around October time or September at least. But anyway, I hope you are enjoying what you're reading. And I hope to, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.